Hello and welcome to another episode of the Two Medics podcast. And it's been a while, hasn't it, Thrusha? How you been? What's been happening?
Wait, you haven't introduced yourself. It's been so long that they might have forgotten who you
yeah,
are.
okay, fine. So I'm Imran Lasker. I'm a consultant radiologist who spends far too much time on social media, predominantly TikTok these days.
Yeah.
What else?
Yourself as well. I've got my
Yeah,
lab,
and then, who are you again? Who are you?
Exactly, yeah. So hi, I'm Thrushkan Wardner, and I'm still a cardiology registrar, subspecialising in intervention. And before we forget, because there's such pros, so we've still got a sponsor who are like paying up with us, who are Scrubs. So they put the U in Scrubs, so that's how you remember the spelling, which is SCRBS. And they're on Twitter, so give them a follow. But crucially, I mean, their scrubs are amazing. I'm still wearing them now, and they're still as soft as they were when they gave them to me months ago. So I do feel ashamed that I haven't kind of given them as many shouts outs as they deserve. But there is a promo code that you can use through us, which is two medics, so TWOMEDICS 10, and that gets you 10% off some already reasonably priced, very comfortable and practical scrubs. So check them out. They fit and feel amazing. Definitely worth thinking about.
Well, I usually go into work in suited and booted, but the other day I actually had to go into work and I wasn't going to be patient facing, and in truth I couldn't be bothered, and so I went in a t-shirt and jeans, and then I thought there may be a situation where I may have to see a patient, so you know what, I've actually got some scrubs, so I took them with me.
Right.
And I've got to say, I've got to agree, they're actually really nice. And a few people were like, why would you want to buy your own scrubs? That makes no sense. And I was like, yeah, but like, touch these. They just feel different. The other ones feel all starchy and hard, but these felt like really soft, and I had pockets. And I was like, well, I don't know. I wish I had these when I was training. Like, this is actually really nice.
So
but
nice,
anyway. Yeah, they are nice. Genuinely, I'm not even saying it. So even if you don't use the promo code, do check it out.
Isn't
and
it
also
like a theme, throughout medicine, where we just spend like so much of our time just putting up with stuff that isn't that good? Like using kind of like Windows XP from like how long ago. And it's like being like, that's fine. And the list is on like some Word document that's been kind of saved on a desktop. And you just get used to such suboptimal stuff. And so then when you come across something nice, like, that kind of reaction, like they come across something nice, they're like, but why? And it's like, because it's so much better. Seriously.
Yeah. It's the same as shoes. Like, people, when I was starting work, they said, invest in some decent and comfortable shoes. And you do that, and you think, this makes a real difference towards running around. But it does make a difference to be dressed quite nicely. I've just got to say, it really is. And I mean, that's why I dress up in a suit and stuff, because it makes me feel nice. And I don't care whether I look silly, whether I look out of place. Like, I genuinely feel nice if I make the effort turning up in a suit. But now these scrubs, I mean, they're nice and they look nice. And I thought, all right, maybe I should. I think like I've had the idea that I've got to dress up in a suit, but maybe I should start wearing scrubs in, because they did look smart enough and they look nice enough and look very professional. And I do the ultrasound list and stuff, and it could be a better way to go forwards. I don't know. Maybe I change the error of my ways and start doing scrubs instead of wearing a suit and tie to my ultrasound lists. But Thrusha, now that we know who you are again, what's going to happen? Where you been? You've done the marathon now, haven't you? Or you
I did,
on with that?
I ran the marathon. Well, still trying to complete it. It was hard, man. Yeah, so I did that. That was in April. And at the moment, I do have the next thing is like a Spartan half marathon, which is in Gloucester. I'm doing that with Chris Wilde and Jamie Sherrington. Yeah. Thinking I might try and do that for charity as well. I was moved, man. I was moved at how many people like donated so much money to me. Like I raised like over $1.5 grand, I think. Like,
wow,
it's bonkers. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
Even though it was horrible, like it's a horrible day, it's so awful. At least I could be like, even though like, I was planning on, I had all these kind of like lofty ambitions for how quickly it was going to be and whatever, and how terrible that all went. I could still be like, well, I raised quite a lot of money for charity, so.
Yeah, that's good. Really that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I can't believe you had the time for that. I still can't believe you did it, mate. I mean, congratulations to you, and
I don't think I'll be doing it
kudos
again.
and all that stuff. Yeah, honestly.
So there are so many reasons that we kind of like have put this off, isn't it? Because it's now been, I think it's like 3 months or something since we.
Has it been? Yeah,
like
I guess
that.
it might be. Yeah.
So like the marathon was, and then so I was due to submit my thesis, my MD thesis this week.
Yeah, what is happening with the thesis? Because our listeners, if we have any still, have been listening to you talk about your thesis for quite a while now. So what is happening with your thesis?
So it's 170 something pages long.
Oh, novel. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, literally, it's really long, and it's just it was one of those things that I kind of embarked upon because in interventional cardiology, anyway. Depending on who you speak to, like there are some jobs that are just really competitive, and
No, mate, you could be a nurse and do that now. It doesn't matter. Anyway, carry on.
Oh yeah, we need to talk about that. Save that energy though, because we need to touch upon that. But yeah, like up until that Band 7 nurse did a TAVI, like I was under the impression that you needed quite a lot like of extra stuff to be able to do these things. So I did an MD, and so I'm in the process of writing it up. And if anyone wants to know what
Sorry,
that's like,
I
if
know
you
I'm
want to waste your
laughing,
time,
but
like
yeah,
me.
genuinely, like it just seems so like one of those situations. You know, like how like you can just imagine that someone's like really trying to win this race, and they train and the train and
Yeah.
the train and the train and the train, and someone
Sounds
just
like
pops
a
out the
taxi.
blue and just
Yeah,
wins the
yeah,
race. You'd be like, "What?
yeah,
I just spent my life working up to this point." Someone just
yeah.
come in and
I was
taken the
livid.
winner.
I was livid.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I keep pulling it back onto Twitter and all that, but yeah, no, you tell me about your
Yeah.
thesis.
So there was
Yeah,
the
what's going on?
thesis, and so yeah, I'm due to like submit that, and then I have a Viva, which is like where I have to prove to someone that I wrote that stuff, so they'll ask me questions on it.
Chat
And
GPT. Anyway,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So there's that. Oh my god! And then we were planning on recording, and then my internet went down. Like literally, someone like was digging
Yeah,
up the other
this is
side
this
of
is
the
the
road.
best bit. This is the best bit.
Yeah.
The excuses that were coming out. It
Yeah,
was just like,
literally.
oh yeah,
You
my
had a
internet.
few as
It's
well.
like,
You'd be like, oh, I'm in Norway, or like, what was
Sweden,
it?
big
Sweden. I was
difference.
saying,
Yeah, it's so rude. Anyway,
You're
yeah.
like, oh, like I'm going camping. All these things that I would never like that you don't do. I like these kind of far fetched excuses. But yeah, like they dug up the other side of the road, and then the guy who like dug it up says, oh yeah, we've ruined your cables, but you should get fiber. All of your neighbors have fiber. And I was like, how can you tell that? And he's like, I can see. I can see underground. They've all got
Oh
fiber. I'm
wow.
like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So so not only did
He's
he
right.
ruin
He
my
can see underground because he's
Yes.
literally. Yeah.
because
Anyway.
he ruined my cables. He ruined my cables. Anyway, so I didn't have internet, which is so hard, man, because our Sky had gone down. So I'm like so sweaty, it's so hot. Like our Sky went down like a few days before, and to be honest, you're like whatever. Like if I've got Disney Plus, catch up, whatever. And then when the internet went down, it was like the Hunger Games at home. Like the kids were like, "What are we gonna do?" Like it was very difficult.
Mate, if the internet goes down here, my doorbell won't work, my TV remote won't work,
it's crazy,
everything
isn't it?
will be out the window. Like there's just nothing that would work in my house anymore. It'd just be gone.
I've got
The only thing
I've
not
got to,
connected is probably the fridge.
Oh God, can you imagine?
Can you
But,
imagine if the fridge
I've got to
was?
say, like iPhone Master Race or whatever, because I was just personal hotspotting my phone and I got
yeah,
unlimited.
yeah.
It made such a big difference. I was like, oh, actually, we could survive. We could survive. But I was going to the library to like to work on my thesis because I didn't have an internet at home, which was all eye-opening as well when you kind of see people using the library. And randomly, I got approached by some librarian who like I was trying to plug my laptop in, and she comes up to me and she's like, you can't plug. You know, she had this proper like traffic warden vibe, and she's like, you can't plug your laptop in there. And I was like, okay. And she did it like I was, I don't know, like I was gonna vandalize the place by plugging in my charger. I was like, okay. And she's like, are you here for help with your visa? I was like, yeah, literally. I was like, no. I was there with someone else. Who was like, no, we're not. And then he kind of, because I think he could tell from the tone in my voice, I wasn't finished with that conversation. And he wanted to end it very quickly because he's like, dude, we're in a library. And, but I was quite ready to kick off. Anyway, yeah, so it's interesting, man. Interesting. But we finally made the time for it. And here we are.
Yeah.
And, gosh, so like, yeah, so you went to Sweden, Norway, wherever. Did you?
Yeah, I've
how was
been
that?
genuinely, I've been really, really busy. I mean, that's the thing. Like, as people may or may not know, I did cut down a lot of my time in the NHS to try and spend more time with family and stuff. But I ended up just being busy with other things. Like, people may. I mean, I don't push it; it's too hard. But yes, I do run a lecturing side hustle business, and that's been taking up a lot of my time. And then part of that was we partnered up with a Swedish company called Collector Minds Radiology, and I do a lot of videos and a lot of teaching for them as well, and try and help with their platform, kind of on a consultancy basis. So I actually went over to their headquarters in Stockholm, which is really nice. And it was a very different vibe. Like, you know, in medicine anyway, when you do the medical thing, it's all kind of like, no, this is the way to say things, this is the way to do things, and that's it. All right. And there's no like two ways about it. And it's always audit research, kind of a bit boring, isn't it? But with these guys, it was really like, okay, as a user of our platform, what do you think? And you could literally say anything and they're taking notes. They were just taking notes and notes and notes. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. And so, like, for example, one small thing is like, they were like, you know, we get a lot of people signing on, but they don't stay on and they don't come back. Like, why do you think that is, Imran? And I was like, well, I don't think you're offering enough value. And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you know, what does it actually mean to go to Collector Minds Radiology? What does that mean? And they were kind of not sure. I was like, well, it's the same thing as like Red Bull. Like, if you got Red Bull, they kind of have that phrase, oh, gives you wings. And you think, okay, that wakes me up. But with Collector Minds, you don't have that feeling of, what value am I getting out of it? You just go to the talk and then you leave, and they're, oh, and then you can see them writing away. And like, you could never say that in the NHS.
Well,
You know what I
you're
mean?
spitting
Like,
some bars. Yeah, that sounds good, man.
but you know
That's
what I mean?
fun.
Like, it's just, these are the things that just, you could say that in the NHS and whatever management, they're like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
and they wouldn't
yeah,
care.
yeah, yeah.
Like, all right, yeah, we'll still, yeah.
And the amazing thing about the NHS is that they keep doing meetings and they keep asking you the same questions. And you keep saying the same things.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then nothing would change.
Nothing
And they'd be
happens.
like, but how do you feel about it? Here's the resilience. And then all that would come of it would be some mandatory, like, online module to do.
Yeah, exactly. So with these guys, after be in there like physically for a change, within a week they'd done a brand new mock-up of the entire website and would just show me like these are the based on what you were thinking, what you're saying, like what do you think of this? And I was like,
Oh
wow, you guys
wow.
are rapid, man. Like this is amazing. So it is amazing to see what it like the way things could be done, and it's a shame that
Yeah.
we don't. We just don't have that kind of incentive in the NHS really to push the boat like that, right? I mean, anyone who's remotely good at that kind of stuff is probably not gonna, they're going to want to work for these big tech
company.
companies and stuff. So it was very cool though. And Sweden's nice, and I got some family there. It was nice to see them and things. So it was kind of a combination of meeting people and seeing them. And what else? I mean, you know what? I was actually thinking to myself that doing the podcast was actually stopping me working, which is like a good thing. Like I was
Right.
stopping doing as much work as I usually do. But then without the podcast happening every week, literally, I've been reporting like a madman.
Really?
Yeah, which has been good and bad. Like it's been good and bad, and it's just been busy. Like I said, like I wasn't trying to be busy, but I ended up being quite busy. And just more meetings happen, more people want to talk about something. Some people want to know about how I do something. It's been going, but it's been busy.
Yeah. You did another
yeah.
podcast, didn't you, as well,
I
recently?
did, yeah. I was on
Radiopedia.
Radiopedia. So Radiopedia, for those that don't know, is a really great website, and first out of the blue they started their own podcast, and they messaged me saying, look, would you like to be on the podcast? And I thought that is absolutely amazing. Like I'd love to be, because I was already on the talk last year. I'll be on the talk this year, the annual conference, doing a talk on gym injuries for anyone that's interested, which we can talk about in a bit. But then so then they invited me to the podcast, and they just, again, it was a bit like what we've done, where it just wasn't happening. Like we kept saying, yeah, we'll do it here, we'll do it then, we'll do it then, and then either I lost my voice or something happened on their side, and I thought it wasn't going to happen, and then they finally did it. But it was very different from the way we do things, because obviously ours is quite the conversation, but this was a little bit more, no, we're going to go through some learning material, and it was about American classification of C-spine fractures.
Whoa!
And I was like, okay, that's cool, man.
Nice.
Let's do it. I was just happy to be on the Radiopedia podcast, because to me, if you asked me, if you told me 3-4 years ago, maybe more than that, like you'd be on that platform on any level, I'd just be like, that's cool, man. And it happened, so it was really nice.
Yeah.
But this mini story behind
And
my,
you've only got me
yeah,
to
go on.
thank for that.
No, exactly. I mean, genuinely, there was a lot of like experience and thinking off the cuff and all that kind of stuff that did help. Like I was trying to put the jokes in and segues and stuff like that. And I hope it's decent. I hope it's a decent episode. But anyway, we'll see. But it was just nice to be part of it. It really was.
So I mean, is it
yeah.
is it available on similar platforms? And like when do you expect to hear your episode?
I don't know when it will come out. I mean, I don't know how quick they are to turn these things around. So, but I'm sure when they do, I'll retweet it and stuff. So, if anyone's interested in learning, I mean, there are a few, like we do go off topic on some areas, but like 'cause there were a few questions about what kind of rules do you live by? What do your parents think of you being a radiologist and stuff like that? So I obviously told them that, and hopefully it was funny or entertaining on some level.
Yeah.
But with regards to the talk that I did, so I did a talk on gym injuries and radiology essentially, and I did it very much like I would do like a YouTube video. I really did take a lot of inspiration from it. But then being a YouTube video is only 10 minutes long, and then when I got the feedback, they said, "Hey, there's not enough radiology in it, and it's only 10 minutes long. It needs to be 20 minutes long, and it needs to have more radiology." And I thought, actually, that's kind of true, because I did kind of pitch it as someone that doesn't know anything about any scans whatsoever, and actually, I have to assume that people who are coming to this conference know something. So I tried to do that thing of like. It was 10 minutes long, add like little intros and outros to like add a few seconds here and there, and then add I just kept doing it, and it just became a complete shambles. It was a complete disaster.
Oh, no.
Like, it just looked like complete, like there's me talking, and then suddenly out of the blue I come talking from like slightly different looking with slightly longer hair and different the whole thing just wasn't working. It was a complete disaster. So that was horrendous, because I was working so hard till like 2 o'clock in the morning trying to edit this thing, and I realized I need to dump this and start again. So then I re-recorded the entire thing all over again. And I think it's better now. I mean, you watched it, so I mean, you said you're not a radiologist,
like
but
it.
You said it was pretty good. So hopefully
I enjoyed
that it's
it. It was
good
quite
enough.
I remember thinking it was quite funny. Like you had like funny bits in it, and it's just like
Yeah, I made I used some of the stuff we
you.
did from the comedy course and stuff, and added that, and used a green screen for once. So that was very midlife crisis-esque, I guess, on some level, where I had a green screen and I was talking in front of scans and stuff. So I did pull out as many stops as I could. So it was good fun.
Yeah.
But that's what's been keeping me busy. It's been busy, but good busy, and I've enjoyed it. And sometimes I got tired. I tell you one more thing. Like I was so tired one day. I literally, I was going to the school to drop my kid, and I got there, and we're about 10 minutes early, and I realized that I am so dead. I'm like so tired. So I said, listen, you watch TV for the next 10 minutes. Hey Siri, put a timer for 10 minutes, and I just zonked out. I was gone. 10 minutes.
Oh wow.
Starting now.
Yeah, I was completely you heard that, isn't it?
Ready?
But
Yeah.
I was completely gone. And then, the timer went off 10 minutes later. I was like, oh, time to drop him. And I managed to get him in and get back to the car, drive home. And I fell asleep, I think, in the garden. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah, such is my life sometimes. Anyway, it's all good. It's
Mate.
all good.
Is it good? I don't
Right.
know. That sounds good to me.
No, it's all good. It's all good, man. It's all progress. It's all getting somewhere. It's all working
all
towards
cash money,
the
it's
bigger
all
goals.
cash
So it's all
monies.
good. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I'm
Speaking of
not
like-
even denying it. It's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, fair enough. So
Did
like,
you notice I
I mean,
did an NGL, by the way, and that has just continued to go. Like this
What's
NGL,
NGL?
so Not Gonna Lie. It's something called Not Gonna Lie, where you put a link out and then people can
Oh, yeah,
click on
I
it
do notice
and then
it every
just
so
ask
often you add more to
anonymous
it. I'm like,
questions.
oh,
Yeah, people I log in as, there's another couple of questions. There's another couple now I've got to reply to, and I said I wasn't going to lie, so I haven't lied about anything. But yeah, just interesting that there's that much interest in all of this. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
fair enough.
That's me.
Yeah,
Twitter.
yeah, cool.
What's been going on Twitter, mate?
Man.
That's what we were just about to say, but I thought, let's record and talk about it. So what's happening? What's happened?
I think it's probably because of the heat. Do you know what I mean? Like, part of it is like the heat
Global
just kind of
warming,
like
that's
sets
what it
people
is.
off.
Yeah.
People are angry. I mean, obviously on our list of things to talk about, there is some stuff that kind of harks back a little bit to like May. But obviously the theme is, the theme of things is the kind of dissatisfaction, and obviously an ongoing saga is the kind of junior doctor strikes. And I think one of the things that kind of happens now, much like in 2016, is that because junior doctors, well, doctors in general, are not a monolith, and so there are going to be people who have different opinions. And if anyone says anything, I think at the moment, if anyone says anything that kind of seems kind of not 100% in solidarity, I guess, or perceived to be not 100% in solidarity of the strikes, there's a lot of anger and outrage. I have to say, I mean, I think we both still, we fully support the strikes. We kind of see, we want full pay restoration, and as far as we can see, that's the only way to achieve. That's the only bargaining chip we have. Like everything else has been tried, nothing else has worked. So and that's the only way. There were some tweets. Did you see this week? There was some from Yasmin Ortiz. She's been on our podcast, and she said that, I mean, my mortgage has gone up by about £500 a month, so it's hard, man. And so these strikes, obviously they do end up costing you money. And she'd put it out there like, it's hard. And people were like, this kind of distracts from the, it's undermining. What do you think? Do you think that's undermining?
Look, I think the government have got you exactly where they want you, really. I mean, they've got you in a situation where you can't afford to strike. And they've got the upper hand. And I know I listen to a lot of podcasts and all this stuff about business and negotiation and kind of things like this. And I think you lose the bargaining tool when, when you've got something to lose. Like if you've got nothing to lose, you walk out. There's nothing to lose. But I think our enduring problem with all of this is that the general public are actually not that interested. And the reason is because they do see doctors a bit of an elite and a kind of elite force, and they're already getting paid so much, so why don't they get paid more? And that's just the way they see it. And the government really do, I feel, play on that as much as possible. And so, like, if someone like you or anyone says that they can't afford their mortgage, they'll be like, well, you're probably living in a big house anyway. That's the kind of thing that you'll have thrown at you. And so I think if the government know that, then there's not very much. I think we're in a bit of a tricky situation in terms of how much can we afford and how far the government are willing to take it. Now, the government are only going to care about public votes and that kind of thing. But the unfortunate truth is that I think I've used an analogy before. Like if you saw Cristiano Ronaldo in a Bentley or a McLaren or something, like a really lovely car, you think, cool, man, that's awesome. But I think the general public have an attitude that if a doctor's got a McLaren or something, they're some sort of scammer. They're not a good doctor. They're kind of playing the system, or they're dishonest on some level. Yeah, which is a bit. I've always found a very, very odd thing. Like I've made no secret that as to why I turn up to work. I like to do a good job, but I expect to get paid. Yeah. But the attitude that you can't do that is a bit weird. You almost feel embarrassed that like this is a situation. So when doctors come to ask for money, it's already on the back foot. It's already on the back foot.
Do you think that's like a UK thing? Because like I saw this interview in the I think it was on like YouTube, and this guy was interviewing this dude who had like he kind of like randomly goes up to people who have nice cars and is like, I love that guy.
Danny Mac. Yeah,
someone like that anyway.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, I'm an anaesthetist, and he was talking about
saw that. Yeah, go on.
And I was like, this guy had no shame. He was just like, bosh. This is what I do. This is what I invest. And and whatever. And amazing. More fire to him. And I was thinking like, I can't imagine someone going up to someone in the UK and a medic, and one, being in that kind of situation where you could answer those
Yeah.
questions, but two, even if they were like being able to answer quite so candidly, it was amazing, really. And I definitely think there's this kind of attitude in the UK whereby if you're seen to kind of revel in money, that's somehow dirty. And
Mm.
unless you're a footballer or unless you're like a movie star or whatever, and I think there is a real like sickness in the UK where they think that people have to, like, and I think it kind of, it's the other side of the thing where they, like they look at the underdog story and the kind of person who came
Mm.
from nothing and they made something of themselves, and they love
Mm.
that story, but there's something like they really like fetishize the struggle. And I
Mm.
think they like
Mm.
to see the idea of like a tortured medic who's kind of, works all hours and, drives back in like in a bust up like 20-year-old like Renault Clio coming back home and then eating old Chinese out of the fridge and drinking from like a half eaten, half open, like
Mm.
a open bottle of wine. I think there's this kind of like fetish about it, and I think
Mm.
they really like enjoy it, like the tortured
Mm.
soul thing. And I think for a long time we probably played into that as well, like, because there probably was a bit of kind of cultural capital with kind of recognize,
Mm.
and that's why you get these books that are like, or, that kind of talk about the emotional impacts of being a doctor, but kind of almost revel in that. So, but I
Mm.
think in the UK, there seems to be like a whole other level of like fetishizing the hustle and the struggle, but I don't really, and the kind of getting there though seems to be held as a kind of you've sold out.
Mm. But if we take a step back, I think there's a few things here that are probably on a societal level, in that doctors and medics are seen as an unattainable goal for many, and
Mm.
we know that that's true. Like for most people to become a doctor, it will take a huge amount of personal sacrifice of the families, financially and time wise,
Yeah.
etc., etc. Right, and so it's seen as an unattainable goal. Like even if you're phenomenally talented, without some sort of backing behind you on some level, it's going to be a bit of an uphill struggle, right? But then things like becoming a footballer, a singer, all these kind of things, these are always seen as an attainable jump, like an attainable jump into the higher echelons of society. And so I think as long as that it remains to be the fantasy of so many, like so many people would love to be a singer, a rapper, whatever it is, actor, actress, then I think as long as that remains to be the case, that anyone out there could become one of those things, they're always going to be seen to be slightly more amicable than someone who has had any sort of backing to get to where they want to. And this is what you're talking about, the fetishization of having to kind of really go through the hard graft. And you're not entrepreneur if someone's rich already and become more rich, you can't be an entrepreneur. You have to be dirt poor, work your way all the way up to the top, and then you are deemed as an entrepreneur, which is completely like a complete fallacy. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like someone goes from nothing to get rich, or someone goes from rich to get richer. It's the same battle, the same game. Like someone could just stay rich or stay poor. So
Yeah.
the point is, the reason I'm saying that is just because I think that doctors, somehow they've just ended up falling in the situation where we're just seen as an elite thing, and maybe on some level we are. And some of the things we'll talk about on this particular episode, given what's been going on med Twitter, probably solidify that on a lot of levels. Like, do you remember that thing about apprenticeships that came
Oh
up? Do you
yeah.
remember?
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if we got that tweet, but there was the idea of people not having to go through med school per se, but having to do an apprenticeship and then become doctors via another route. Was that the school leavers? You've got that. So it was
Yeah. Johnny Kukian.
Johnny Gukian. Yeah, I'm going to open that and read that out. This bring back memories of reading tweets, but here we go. So I'm going to read this out. So, oh no, so he was basically replying. So if problem-based learning at medical school came out in Twitter era, this place would have been a complete fire. And the issue was that, somewhere along the line, someone or somewhere up had suggested that you don't need to go to medical school. You just need to go to do apprenticeship, and you work your way up and then become a doctor. And then people were very negative about that. But you can see the good things about that, right? I mean, surely you can, Tusha, can't you? Like that, it's not a terrible thing. And people talk about, we need a livable bursary. And I think we joked where we said, okay, imagine if you had a livable bursary where you did clinical work, where you literally learned the things that you need to learn to become a doctor. Would that be acceptable? Like most people say, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's exactly what we need to do in medical schools. Like, great. So what happens if we call it an apprenticeship? Like, nah, not doing that.
No.
Not
Yeah.
having that.
Yeah. The thing is that
Okay.
I think one of the things that it falls down to is that the people who seem to be, they maybe I'm pandering to stereotypes, but the kind of people who seem most uncomfortable with like medical apprenticeships are also the ones that also seem really kind of uncomfortable with international medical graduates as well. And the conversation always seems to kind of involve those two things. And if you think about it, the kind of what they have in common is that they come into the pool of people applying for jobs, and then it kind of falls into a really commonly used narrative that, you know, like most economists would say is nonsense, but they still fall into that whole thing where if there's more people in the pool, it's going to drive wages down. That's what they're obsessed with. When in actual fact, that's not the case. Often that means that people who are kind of like more senior get promoted more early. It's not, and you know, you need people, if you've got kind of people who do apprenticeships, you're going to need people to like supervise them and support them and whatever, and that creates jobs. But people don't like it, and they'd rather limit the pool than the campaign for the other thing, which is more training numbers, more consultant posts, which is what everyone's crying out for. Even the patients are crying out for. Because if you think about it means that, you know, shorter waiting times, more people to perform their procedures. You know?
But that kind of brings us on to quite nicely, I guess, like the idea of, okay, are all jobs medic jobs? Like, do all you know, quotation jobs that need to be done in the hospital need to be done by a doctor, a qualified doctor? No. And that brings me on to the idea about that TAVI situation. I call it a situation or thing that had happened that kind of really seemed to blow up Twitter quite a lot that evening and for quite a while afterwards. And I was getting messages and WhatsApp messages and discussions about the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, you sent it to me.
Yeah.
You sent it to me,
exactly. I sent it to you. Like, dude, what is this? Because I was a bit like, okay, mate, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be straight up with you. What is a TAVI? And is this a big deal? And you're like, it's big deal.
Yeah, I'm literally, I think when I got that message, I've been in the library, I've been working on my thesis, which is all, you know, and TAVI is something close to my heart because, you know, a lot of like I'm applying for fellowships jobs and stuff at the moment and be interested in doing TAVI. And so it is something, so just for people out there who don't know what it is. So TAVI stands for trans-aortic valve intervention. Trans-aortic valve intervention. I was going to say apical because one of the ways that we do it is a cut in the apex, you know, where the apex B is. But most commonly, TAVIs are minimally invasive procedures whereby you replace someone's aortic valve, so usually through the groin or a cut around the neck, and you pass through with a tube up the aorta to where the heart is, and you inflate a new aortic valve over the top of your old stenotic or regurgitant aortic valve. And that was like, you know, at the moment, we're collecting more and more data, but you'll see that there are more and more people young. So it used to be that if you weren't fit enough for open heart surgery to have a valve replacement, which is traditionally how you'd have it done, you'd be referred for a TAVI. People who are more frail, you know, too frail. But the Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, Arnold Schwarzenegger, they both had TAVIs. They don't want open heart surgery, and you know they're paid to have TAVIs. And so because you don't have to like worry about the sternum, the healing of the bone of your chest afterwards, you know, it's literally you can have it done as a day case. You can have it under sedation. You go home the same day. I mean, that is amazing. The reason why there are lots of theories as to why. There are lots of reasons as to why people were upset in cardiology afterwards. One, because we're cardiologists. Obviously, that's what people picked up on. It's cardiologists. I liked your tweet, which was like, cardiology has fallen because, you know, because there's someone who kind of went out there saying, oh, you know, they didn't care about like everyone else, but now it's cardiology. Now they're interested. And I remember reading that and thinking to myself, that's so funny because the number of times that I've said stuff about everything else and people are like, what do you even know about it? You're a cardiologist. Like, you know, just, you know, like an opinionated cardiologist, like what are you doing? And then it's like thrown the other way, like, oh, now you care. Like, you think the monkeys could do everything else. I'm like, just, you know, maybe I think you all are monkeys, but like, you got that from me not saying anything. You're a good one. But the thing, so the reason why, like, I feel particularly vexed about it is because it is really hard to get TAVI experience as a registrar. Like, it really is. Like, because a lot of centres, like I was looking actually at a fellowship today and they were like, oh yeah, this centre performs 75 TAVIs in a year. And I think for an operator to feel comfortable, but for an operator, theoretically, for you to feel comfortable doing a TAVI, technically you should have done about between 50 and 100 TAVIs. You've got to have done them first operator, and you should feel comfortable doing it. And if if the whole hospital does 75 in 1 year, that's one trainee then doing that. They've got the amount of procedures for basically maybe 1.5 trainees to do it. And so then if you've got this as a tweet from Glenfield Hospital suggested that there's a nurse who said maybe did 5 or 25 in that time. That's someone's losing out on that. And there are people who
I
are
would
applying
suspect he's
abroad.
been there longer than that. No, like, I mean, my assumption was that this nurse had been there for a very long time. I mean, that's the
Right.
only way these things work. No, like, okay, no, you carry on, but I'm just saying, like, I would
Sure.
be surprised if this person was a brand new trade. Like,
Oh, I see.
I
So
would
it
have thought
did
they'd been there for
75 in
10
that year.
years. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
sure.
would have thought they would have
But
done like 10, as
fine.
time goes on.
So
I've got my theory behind this, and I'll go into that.
fine.
But carry on,
So
yeah,
say
yeah.
if that centre does, I mean, Glenfield obviously does a lot more than 75. Say if they do like 150, right, and you need between 50 and 100, then that means that you could probably train maybe 2, maybe 3 fellows. But say if he does maybe 10 or 25 in that year, because he's experienced and done them before, that's already kind of like you're already
Yeah.
halving fellows a chance of getting enough to be confident in doing TAVIs independently. So there's that. And then with TAVIs, people die having TAVIs, right? And for a couple of one way is where if you inflate the aortic valve, if you inflate across the aortic valve, a lot of them go into complete heart block. So back in the day when people had TAVIs, they'd have temporary wires put in just in case. Some still do, or they have like devices that are able to do it. So you need to be able to do that pretty toot sweet. And was the nurse trained to do temporary wires as well? That's like, most medical registrars, medical consultants can't. You have to be a cardiologist to do that. One of the other complications is that you can cause coronary obstruction. So you can cause a STEMI. So what, can that person do PCI as well? And then the third complication is pericardicentesis. Like you can cause a pericardial. So there are 3 main ways in which you can die. Oh, actually, and then there's fourth, which is the bleeding site, which they probably could deal with, I guess. But there are 3 kind of ways that you could die that you need to be a kind of fairly senior cardiologist to deal with, to stop them from dying. And you can like, okay, well, they have other people in the room. But what is the point? What is the point in training someone to be independent if they're not going to be because they're not able to manage the complications of the procedure? Or if it just seems ridiculous.
So I mean, okay, I've got my theory. So what's the place again? Glenhop Cardiac.
Glenfield,
What's it called
yeah.
again?
It's
Glenfield.
Leicester.
Okay, so the thing is, I suspect that this person, I'm speculating completely, but based on let's say quotation mark experience, this person who did it has been there for a long time. And have been very, very keen to get involved for a very long time, and has been pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, emailing and talking to managers and managers. You know what I mean? Like they've been a real kind of pushy person to try and get involved in this, right? And then from the consultant's point of view, I'm speculating again. I don't know what the consultants are like, but just based on my experience of some consultants, they're thinking to themselves, okay, hang on, we've got someone that's pushing it. Management thinks it's a great idea because they're going to be cheaper, and if they are able to do it, they're going to be around pretty much forever. Right, they're not going to leave, right? So you've got an option of having someone that could potentially do it for cheaper and is never going to leave, versus getting someone that's going to come in for a year. You've got to train them up, and then they're going to disappear again. So from a consultant point of view, first off, you've got someone who wants to learn and really push you about it, really want to learn, keep turning up, right? So fine, I'll tell you what, I'll train your person, but you're going to have to give me some sessions, pay me extra, or to give me my sessions back. And so they're probably sitting there, maybe watching it after a while, getting a bit bored, or just, I don't know, doing whatever else they do with their time, while this person is learning quotation mark TAVIs, right? And then you get to a point as how long can you really quotation mark train someone until someone says, look, when is this person ready? So at some point they've got to be like, okay, I've run this gig for quite a while now, I've paid for private school fees and the rest of it, I think I'm going to have to say at some point this person's ready. And then they do it, and then they tweet about it, and then now you've got someone that has potentially been able to theoretically do this procedure who's far cheaper than having a consultant. I mean, think about how long it takes to train a cardiologist, let alone how many of us become cardiologists then who go into that field. There's far and few between. So now you got a potential case where someone who's a non-cardiologist who's now being able to do it. If they can pull out data from wherever that this has actually worked on the same level, that's it. Game's up, mate. It's just, I'm not saying it as a way, you cardiologists are done. It's the same thing happening to us in radiology.
Yeah.
We've got I'll say quotation mark, or potentially, what's the word? Allegedly, there may be a consultant interventional radiographer that exists in a trust somewhere.
Right.
A consultant interventional radiographer. So, and this, and this is the kind of thing that where you think, okay, all right, I know where this is going. Let's not pretend it's anything else. You want someone who's cheaper, and this person is very, very keen, who's been pushing for a very long time, and now you've got a situation where maybe they've had a friend in the right place who said, look, this is happening, you're training this person. tell us how long it'll take. And they're going to have to ride this as long as it can until one day they're going to say, look, it's been years.
Yeah.
Is this person ready or not? And they're going to have to say, yeah. And that's
But
it.
I mean,
Game's
I
up.
hear you. Like, but what you're kind of talking about though is that, you know, people having friends and whatever, and then somehow and I'm going to keep going back to the TAVI thing because that's what I know, and I know that there are some department, like not every cardiology department does TAVIs, and one of the reasons for that, I mean, there is this kind of movement to get more and more centres to be able to do TAVIs, and one of the arguments against that is they say, oh, but they're not a surgical centre. You need to be in a centre whereby if there's an emergency, you need to be somewhere for a surgeon to bail you out. Such are the risks of complications that are so high. Now, given that, like, I just don't see how it is feasible to train someone to do that and then never have like a consultant available. Because if, as complications are not uncommon, like they're during PCI, like ultimately someone has to still take responsibility for all that. And when stuff goes down, when it's during PCI or through TAVI, it's fast. So it's not like you can't, you need to be in the room. So then the question is then who's taking responsibility for that? And what is the patient going to say, or what is the family going to say if something kind of kicks off and they're like, yeah, it's done by a nurse who's trained in this, excellent at doing this. Or, or I'm kind of interested because you know what they did? They subsequently backtracked, didn't they? They said, oh, no, it wasn't. There was a consultant in the room.
But then what do they say?
No, they backtracked and they said, oh, it wasn't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
They did another statement.
Fine.
And the thing that I just don't get is, okay, even if they could do that, say if they were, as you say, like they have got to the point where they feel fully competent, and maybe they can do all those.
I never said they were competent, by the way. I never said they were competent.
Oh yeah, but
I'm
say
just
the
saying
implication was
pressure. Yeah, fine, yeah.
But why would they? Because like TAVI is like one thing, and the waiting list for them are long, but actually the backlogs are like people getting to the TAVI MDTs and looking at their kind of other radiology of it, seeing them in clinic, like the wait for the backlog for even seeing them is like 6 months. What you need or what kind of will make things go faster are the is that nurse interested in those things as well? I find in this situation they rarely are, and so like I just think it just doesn't make any sense financially. But obviously I'm kind of saying stuff, but they're like, what the hell? But it's crazy. And so there was outrage, still outrage.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand there's outrage about this stuff, but like I guess from my point of view, I've seen this so often and stuff. Like the thing is, like, I guess it depends on what you like. If we step away from the TAVI thing, I mean, that is a very highly specialized situation, and that's I wish I could say it's unusual, and I wish I could say I wish it wouldn't happen again. But I suspect that the thing is, I think it will happen again. And part of the reason, again, is because most of the time when it comes to these situations, doctors are seen as the limiting factor. And no one really questions as to why is the doctor unable to get to do this, right? And the truth is, you'll be able to tell me more than I would, is that as far as I understand, your cardiology training's now got more general medicine in it. Like you're going to do more general on calls and stuff, right? So you're basically telling these people that they don't have enough time. There's not enough training time to be able to do everything. So you're going to have to take up more time after training to be able to do this. You make it longer, and it also make people do things that are not cardiology related at all. Now, I think the reason that they do that is because it needs people to do that general rota, because they just need people to do that general rota. Who's going to do that general rota by choice? Like no one. Pretty much most of the reason I did not go anywhere near a lot of subspecialties was because that general medical registrar rota. I looked at it, thought absolutely no chance I'm doing that.
No.
Like there's no chance, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
So now think about from the medical reg point of view, right? When it gets really busy and something goes wrong, did you notice what they do to try and help things go through? They get the site manager involved to take the phone calls, don't they? They get the site manager to start vetting the phone calls. Now, why on earth don't you do that from the outset? Because what you really want for a medical registrar to do is not be on the phone. You want them to be making decisions. So what should be happening is that genuinely, they should be like a radiologist, right? With a whole lot of screens and all these medical situations popping up, and they'll be like, do that. Not taking phone calls, nothing else, right? That should literally be it. But the NHS is such a way that it has to work in this particularly obscure situation where
convoluted,
they're just convoluted. They only fight fires when they happen. They never think about how they're going to stop a fire from happening in the first place. And so this is another one of those very short-sighted things where it seemed like a great idea until something goes very, 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 very wrong, which sounds like, I mean, I'm not a TAVI expert, but it sounds like there's high potential for something to go wrong, because if anything goes, and the problem with this is that if anything were to go wrong, everyone's going to be like, well, I mean, it was always going to go wrong, regardless of whether it was a fair thing to go wrong in the first place, whether it was a particularly difficult case and everyone would have like, had a situation that would go badly. This is always going to lose from the outset. So I just think it's really ill-advised. I think it's a really terrible idea when you're doing something like that. But I also think that this kind of stems through all of like the NHS and the way it works. There's no efficiencies. Everyone's just sort of pushing each other to do, for want of a better phrase, the dog's work. Now, the counter to that is when people get upset with physician associates. Like, do you think there's a comparison here between a physician's associate and this TAVI, I'll call it TAVI gate or something, do you think? Or is that not an applicable thing?
Well, I mean, the term that seems to be used a lot is scope creep.
That's right, yeah. Scope creep, yeah. I've been asked that, actually, yeah.
Yeah. And so the theory is that whilst physicians, they're kind of like a cuckoo in a kind of bird's nest. Do you know what a cuckoo does? I didn't realise cuckoos like sounds like a really cute kind of term, but they kind of like they kind of cry louder than the other babies, and so then the mum of the other birds kind of feeds the cuckoo more and more and ignores its own.
I did not know that.
Babies.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
and so they're
kind of like the NHS. So if you're someone who emails a lot, you're more likely to get what you want.
Literally. So what happens is a cuckoo bird will kind of put its egg into a nest of another bird, and so that their babies will kind of cry louder, and they get fed more and more and more, and they're a bit like a parasite. I shouldn't compare, but I've heard people compare physicians' associates to that because they say that what happens is that they're there, and essentially what happens is because they get to know the team for longer, whereas people are like rotating through. And you do see tweets from people. I saw a tweet from a consultant surgeon recently saying, "Well, we get to know them for longer, so whereas you guys just kind of like rotate through, and so they don't form that kind of emotional connection with them. And then so eventually what happens is, even though they were there to kind of help with the kind of ward-related tasks, they get encouraged to do things kind of more and more outside of their scope, drains and procedures, and then because there's a level of seniority that comes with that, and then they go into the registrar rota, and that's the creep anyway, as they describe it. And
but is this the same thing? Is this an applicable thing?
Is it the same thing?
There's a creep here, yeah, because you got a nurse that's turning up, right, and they're just kind of helping with giving you whatever cardiologists need, and then one day
they're doing
the procedure.
Look, I mean, I've only got a tiny brain, and I've got to say, it looks bad. It looks bad to me. I think there's like a role.
But where do we stop? Where do we begin? Like, where do we say, like, look, you can do the cannulas, but stop there, mate.
Exactly.
That's it. You can hand me things, but you need to stop.
Yeah, I think the thing
Otherwise
is,
you're creeping into my space.
I think what they need. I think the slippery slope argument is a weak one. I hate slippery slope arguments. I think they're just lame because it kind of just makes you not really think about things anymore. I think that if it just seems weird though the other way around to make people do a medical degree, which is longer and whatever. If like you can actually not do a medical degree and get the same thing, so there's got to be like a difference between the two. Otherwise, just get rid of the medical degree and just have everyone be PAs and whatever.
Work your way up,
yeah. Or like because there was that whole thing, wasn't there, about like a PA they could be like a PA registrar, but you didn't have to do like the exams and stuff. I think that's rubbish, man. Make them do the exams then. If you're gonna do that, they got to do the exams. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like why? Because then you're like,
but the exams are useless, no?
Then the medics shouldn't have to do the exams either. Like, why are they even doing it?
That's what I would. Yeah, exactly. I would rather that way around. Like, okay, let's not all sit the exams because exams are rubbish. We know
you always get someone, usually some like battered old consultant who's like 67 years old and has got like private work and whatever. Exams are very important. You're like, okay, whatever. So whatever.
Yeah.
So get rid of the exams or everyone does the exams. I don't care. But like one thing, just it's got to be fair. So like I get that people are vexed about it. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not like completely, whatever. Like, I get it. And I do think that I do reckon as doctors, they are, it's like when I always use this analogy, but like when you're on call and you find out that like one of your colleagues has turned up, is not going to turn up because they're sick. And you're like, okay. And you're just like, write faster. And that's like what life is as like a doctor. Like, oh yeah. It's going to be shitter now. Okay, like write faster.
It's okay.
It's now you're gonna have to do the job of two people. Okay, yeah, let's write faster. And that's like the life of a doctor. And I just feel like that's always the way. And sometimes you need to push back a bit. And So
Yeah,
I get
it's
that
difficult.
energy.
Like I've had so many thoughts about all of this in terms of like you don't want medicine to be elitist in any kind of way, but then
Yeah.
when see people seem to be seemingly coming into the medical field without a medical degree, even though I don't think medical degrees are all that useful, we feel like, oh, hang on, you need to do what I did to get to where I've got to, otherwise you're not the same thing as me. And I think recently I don't normally get involved in this, but there was someone who said like, oh, I'm really upset that these people can prescribe medications. They never went to any prescription lectures, and I was like, oh, there were prescription lectures? Like I didn't even.
I didn't go to those.
So
What?
yeah, I think I tweeted back like, hang on, did you actually go to these? Like, and they were like, yeah, well, okay, whether you went or not, you still had to pass exams. Like, so you don't have to. I don't understand what's going on here, because you're saying that to be able to prescribe, you've got to go to the lecture, but at the same time, you don't have to, as long as you pass exams. So how do we know these people can't pass exam? And prescriptions don't actually take that long to figure out. Did it in about an afternoon or less than that? So I think sometimes it's difficult to really know where the line is, but being a radiologist, I keep saying, because I can only speak from my own experience, there's been this thing going on for a long, long time where there's people who, cardiologists who can say they can look at cardiac MRI, which is great, right? And then there'll be people who are radiographers who start reporting CT colons and MRI brains and stuff like this, right? These things happen.
Yeah,
And then
true.
after a while, I started to think to myself, and okay, so the way I see it is if I turn up to work, right, if I was an F1 and I turned up to work and then they said, I've got to go on this ward run, yeah, fine, mate. Didn't want to be on it, but I'll be here. And then said, but this person can take the notes, right? And they said, they're going to do the cannulas, cool. And they're gonna do this, right? Am I still getting paid for this? That's literally what my thing would be. But then maybe that's just the way I am. Like I just think
So your
the
point
jobs.
is to distill it
I
down.
think,
Your
I think
point is
my
stuff
point is
changes.
my point is
Stuff can
yeah
change.
my point is that medicine has evolved again and again and again, and it continues to evolve. Like at one point, only doctors could stick a needle into a person. Only doctors. Can't be done by anyone else. And then you got cannulation teams and stuff like that. These things start happening, and then you start getting, only GPs can see or like medical problems. And now, when I go to the GP, where I had to do for my children with the ear infections, you don't see a GP. That's not a gun on any GP, but I'm just saying. But in truth, when I look back, I think they would have done the same thing as a GP would. I had no issues with the way they treated my kids. It was fine. So I just think that. It seems to me that the job is changing so quickly in front of our eyes. Like my job is changing so quickly.
Seems to me
and maybe
that you lived your life like a candle in the wind. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I agree with you. It is. But but okay, when I was getting a training, they were saying, look, teleradiology is a big deal. It's going to start making people from other countries do your work from abroad, and they're going to do just as good a job, and then no money. Everything's going to go down. But it hasn't been the case, because actually worldwide there's a massive shortage of radiologists, let alone, let's say, India, for example. How many radiologists do they need and how many do they have? Let alone them do the work that we've got. And on top of that, there are disease differences between what they see and what we see. And so there is sometimes only so far that you can get without having some experience of the local area that you're reporting for. And even down to our level, like if I do a report for, I don't know, let's say Manchester, I'm sure, and someone might tweet at me saying that they didn't like my report and they went and found their local Manchester person and they may have disagreed or agreed with me. But the point is, I'm not a local guy. I'm not the local person. They trust the local person more than they trust someone in London doing their work, and vice versa. And so you kind of get this sort of territorial thing that's happening in radiology and medicine and all that kind of stuff. But it just seems to keep going. Like the jobs keep changing and you end up doing other things, or you start like taking on new skill from somewhere else and vice versa. And so my final thing, not final thing, I'm sure we'll talk about more. But the other thing I was thinking of is like how people, as medics anyways, as far as I remember, kept saying that, oh, we've got to transfer our skills, mate. You go to the city, you go to the city. So at one point, I don't know if people know this, and I have tweets about this very recently, I did look into going to the city, is when I was in my training and I was flunking everything, and I got a message saying, look, I'm a management consulting company looking for people like yourself. Would you be interested? And I was like, of course I'd be interested. Let's chat. So I talked to them, and when I was listening to them, like it sounded like a lot of work. And I'm not saying I don't work, but like I could do, as in, okay, so I'll just say exactly how it is. They said that you could get to like 80, 90 grand to start off, which sounded amazing. But then like, and I said, okay, where would it end? Like what's the max? I said, well, most people get to 100 grand in, let's say, 3 or 4 years. And I thought, okay, but I'm a radiologist and ST3 right now. So in 2 to 3 years on an NHS salary alone, I should be hitting 70, 80. If I'd start doing some WLIs here and there, I'll probably be pushing 100. If I do some teleradiology, I'll be going higher. So why would I go to the city? It doesn't make any sense to me. And then when I listened to them, they were working really, really hard for their money. They were, these are long hours, right? Up and down the country, going abroad, meetings and stuff like this, And then I looked at this is what I always do. I went back to work and I looked at the most laziest consultant I saw, the laziest one. And I thought, this person I know and everyone knows does absolutely nothing. And they actually probably earn close to, if not more, than the person that is doing all that work, running around the country and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm good here. I'm going to stick around. And so when people keep thinking, oh, I've got transferable skills, like, mate, have you actually looked at how hard those people work? You don't have transferable skills. You're not as sought after as you think you are. And I don't think that you understand like how hard it is outside of medicine anyway. Like GPs, there's a lot of people may say I'm wrong, but personally, I know friends who are GPs who are making way into six-figure salaries, but they don't work like the guys that my wife used to work with when she worked in the city.
Right.
Now, the other thing I'd say is that, let's say you're walking along, and then, I mean, Thrusha, it's probably happened to you and you haven't told us, but anyway, someone's come up to you and say, hey, Thrusha, you're really good looking. Do you ever think about being a model? Yeah, and you're like, you know what, I'll be a model. Yeah, I'll be a model. Yeah, go on then. And you become a model, and you become an actor, an actress, a stand-up comedian, and you want to live this wonderful Hollywood lifestyle.
Yeah.
And all the other actresses and comedians are like, hang on, you didn't go through what I went through. You're not a real comedian.
Oh, like
you're
Dave Bautista.
Model.
Do you reckon if like Rob De Niro sees Dave Bautista and he's like, mate, Did you worked with Martin Scorsese? Because
like what are you talking about?
You just did the Marvel movies.
Well, actually, have you heard about Bob Hoskins? How his origin story, as it were?
No, but I imagine it's probably.
Oh, mate, you should check it out.
Is it?
So basically, his mate went to an audition and he was in the bar, and for some weird reason, he stepped into the audition and got the part.
No way.
No acting, nothing. He just turned up and did it.
No acting chops.
And then he just started to do it, and he was phenomenally good.
Bob
And next
Hopkins
you know,
isn't a great example. He's no Leonardo
he made
DiCaprio.
quite a living off it. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, like, there'll be plenty of actors who are far more talented who did a lot more upwork to get there. So what I'm saying is that it's okay when we jump across to other places, like let's say Adam Kay going to writing and Masuri or whatever, like doing his writing. But then when people come across to us, we're like, no, you can't. So, you're not smart enough.
But we are.
This is the conundrum.
Sure. But like, I want to, in my head, like I'm a bit like, so how does this play out in terms of what are the ways out? And I was speaking to my boss about the whole TAVI thing. I was like, I've written up my MD now. There's no point. I can't. I can turn back time.
Jimmy, if I was your senior, I'd be like, hang on, can I just play you something? And I'd play that song, just sit there and watch your tears come out.
Oh no! Oh, 2 year. Oh, so many dollars, man. So many dollars. Oh gosh. Yeah. Anyway, so I've written up my MD, so I can't take that back. I can't get a refund. So what do I do? He was like, you know what he says? He goes, how fixed are you to the UK? He's like, literally, is that how fixed? And I was like, well, be family and stuff. That's about it.
I don't think it's a terrible thing to say, genuinely, because I just think that
he was serious.
It's a serious thing to think about.
The UK, just get out. And I was like, oh man, that's hard. It's harsh.
But then there are a few more assumptions here, I think, is that I think, unfortunately, for a lot of us, once you become a doctor, that is it. That's all we think we can do. And now I know I went on a bit of a rant about, like, look, you can't just jump into other things. But that doesn't mean that you can't jump into other things. I'm just saying it's not as easy as you think it is.
Yeah.
But I think as a medical profession, we're meant to be smart-ish. I don't think a lot... I don't know if... I'm not going to say the name of the person, Thrusha, but do you remember when we were trying to get to medical school? And we were like, oh, how are we going to get to medical school? And when we got to medical school, there was a particular individual that we thought, how on earth did you get into medical school? And if you got into medical school, why was I worried about getting into medical school?
Wait, is this the person? He's left though. He's left medicine now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to upset the guy. But you know what I'm saying. Like, it's one of those situations where like, yeah. But it's another one of those situations where you think like, oh, okay, it's not as hard as you thought it was. I kind of built it up a bit. But I just think that in general in life, we do seem to sort of, once we get to being a doctor, you think that's it, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But I think we may need to be ready to be like, okay, just be like, okay, no, nothing's a sunk cost really, because like, okay,
no, that's the point. I feel like that's what makes people stay, because they feel like they've invested that time in it. And
exactly. But I'm
not
saying
to do that.
If I'm saying that, look, I'll be honest, I don't think that I would be very surprised and very pleased if we get full pay restoration. Very pleased, but I just don't see it happening. I just don't see it because I don't think the public care enough about doctors and their quotation mark plight, right? I don't think it's going to happen. So if that doesn't happen, and people are still saying they can't pay the mortgage, right? I mean, that's the problem, right? You can't live. Then I mean, think about from I don't know, like you have to do something else, no? You're going to have to.
Well, I mean, that's like two things. But yeah, okay. The first one, I reckon, what people should do, and what you're a good example of it, is not to base like all of your satisfaction from work. Number one, and not to kind of be too like too entrenched in what the idea of being a doctor means to you. I mean, it's it's important to try and get some satisfaction to it, but also to have other aspects of your life. And the other example that you do, you give, just by being you, is side hustles. So have other things going on. And there are one of the beauties of medicine is that there are side hustles. There are stuff to get involved in,
Plenty,
and
plenty,
you just
mate,
got to
honestly.
keep your eyes open, and you can use that creative spirit. And you can there are opportunities and stuff. I say this as if like that's something that's kind of come to me, and it hasn't, but like there is stuff to do. So I think you kind of are. Okay, I've forgotten what the the other thing I was going to say was. Oh God, oh well.
No, but yeah, I think like all I'm saying is okay. So when, I think don't derive your identity from being a doctor is what I'm saying. Like the doctor thing might change. It may even disappear for all we know. People are saying to me, "Oh, Imran, you're going to lose your job." Like, so, I always get this question. Oh, Imran, AI is going to take your job, and I don't know where that's coming from. Are you happy that I'm going to lose my job? Is that a good thing that you don't like what I do? Is that why you're saying that, or are you genuinely concerned for me that AI is going to take my job? And how much do you think I care that AI is going to take my job? Right? The truth is, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all whatsoever. I just do something else. I've always said this because I derive no. Like there's more.
It's not
there's
you,
more
is it?
going on.
You're not like the radiologist.
It's like,
you're like other things.
Yeah.
And also, I think
there's
stuff
other things
will change.
to me.
I don't think it'll disappear.
Yeah,
It'll
exactly.
change.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. This is what I keep saying. Same as the PA thing. Your job's going to change. You're going to be expected to do other things. But I think as long as society still sees a doctor as a medical professional, as someone that they prefer to see, then there will still be a place for you. Like even to the point that you could get blood tests done, right? And then you could have someone explain the blood test to you very, very, very well. But some people will still insist on seeing a doctor, and it may be an F1. Like, and that's often the case where people have left medicine to do blood tests, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, there's someone who's a bit of a med Twitter person that I don't want to mention because I know him, but people don't like him. But they did stuff like this, like a blood test, and then they'll talk to you and go through it. But the gimmick is that he is a doctor, so there's a bit of a social value there, and I think that as doctors we shouldn't let that go and not realize that this is an important thing.
I remember. The other thing that I wanted to mention was like the whole kind of whether pay restoration kind of works or not. I think one of the ways that I guess it wasn't immediately obvious to me was that the way that the strikes work, or the reason why they make a difference, or at least the theory is that they cause disruption by essentially getting the consultants to cover non-elective activity, and that means cancelling elective activity, and that causes disruption to waiting lists. That causes anxiety and people to complain and make them unhappy that way. One of the problems, though, I guess, is that what you'd hope is that there'd be a change in government and a change in policy. But then if you look at kind of Labour, the noises they've been making about kind of reforming the NHS and stuff, and kind of being very much of the mindset, kind of similar to the Tories, where all they really talk about is just kind of hiring more. They keep saying we'll get more medical students to do it, and that already is like a bit of a warning sign, because really what they're kind of saying is getting more people into it. Like what kind of people are? I mean, like what is it? They're not really addressing why people are unhappy, and I think that's because they have no intention to change that. So I have to say that also I'm striking, knowing full well that say if by some like massive change in the way that the government have been responding, but they do agree, I suspect what will happen is by the time they do agree, I'll have CCT'd, so it won't make any difference to me. But I still feel it's important to do, because what other agency do we have other than being able to strike? I don't feel like there's any other way.
No, I agree. But I also think that, like you said, may have to think about moving if it doesn't work. I mean, because I don't see the alternative. Like, we're talking about bills. Like, when you really think about the bills and how much they've gone up, like, how are people doing this? So it just seems to me as though that the UK is not going down the best way, and it may be worth thinking about, like, okay, what are the other opportunities in other places? And when you see, I'm not saying going to America, and I'm not saying America's the answer to the issue, because but when you do see like the way their societal expectations of what doctors make, it's very different and their attitude towards it. And even recently, I went to Bangladesh, and similar kind of thing. And interestingly, over there, they've got no issue with asking you how much you earn. They've got no problems.
Yeah, fair enough.
In the UK, people are very sheepish when they ask me. But here, over there, they're like, "Hey, how much are you earning out there right now?" And you're like, "Oh, okay." You know what I mean? Like it's not. Like, they're all talking about it like it's not a non-issue. No problems whatsoever. But I think in the UK, we're in this perpetual situation of the combination of. Money's a bit of a dodgy subject anyway, because people seem to count your beans and get upset with what you're doing, and doctors just don't have that kind of expectations. Like I said earlier, that you should be doing remotely financially well at all. Whether that's fair or not is another thing altogether. So I just think that as medics, we should be very confident in ourselves, that the job's going to change, and if you need to, you just need to make your moves, man. Just do whatever works for you. Don't feel any sort of inclination to a hostel, any sort of environment. Just go. Do whatever you need to do to keep you and your family alive, well, healthy, happy, etc. Because to me, there's nothing more important than that. There isn't. And then, like I've said before, you could spend 24 hours in the hospital, but when you pass off, they're going to place you with someone else. So why did you do all that 24 hours for? It makes no sense to me.
It's true.
Anyway, yeah. We've come up to an hour, and we've only really talked about those two subjects, haven't we?
Oh, well.
Thanks to you, a lot of this was about TAVIs as well, and I feel like I've learned a lot about TAVIs. Thank you very much.
There you go. I spent the cervical spine anatomy or whatever. So
yeah, no, that's going to be a very good podcast, and I think you should listen to it.
Yeah.
Just to I don't know, because I'm on it, right?
Yeah. Before we maybe wrap up and talk about our sponsors again, should we do some festivals like old times?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
I'll put two at the bottom.
Man, I keep reading festivals. But okay, actually, have you noticed this about Twitter? Twitter has recently got very good at keeping me on Twitter, but the way it's done it is making me watch videos I didn't think I had any remote interest in whatsoever. So recently I've been sending you the odd clip of 30-second knockouts. I don't know why I watched that, but it turns up. Crazy clips that go hard, all these kind of really random, obscure things I've got no interest in. And some of it I've had to be like, I'm not interested. But it seems to be a lot of video formats being thrown my way of very obscure things that are happening, like someone jumping off a diving board and bouncing off the wrong way and clearly quite injured. And you're like, why did I watch that? Why is that on my feed? I've got nothing on. There's no one I follow unless you three are following a lot of this and they've assumed that I would be interested in the same things. Yeah. Have you noticed that about Twitter, or has it been the same on Twitter to you?
It's all very different. I mean, like Elon and stuff, isn't it? It's weird.
Everyone blames Elon, for everything.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's not an odd boy, but I suspect, I don't think he's got everything to do with that company.
Yeah. But he is, he replies to stuff where you're like, sometimes I'm a bit like, yeah, you think so, but
he's an unusual character, isn't he?
He's weird. He's weird.
He's unusual in that, like, most billionaires really stay out of it, don't they? Because I've seen clips of people trying to talk to Bill Gates, and they're like, "You're not talking to Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos." And Jeff Bezos actually comes across quite nice, like, "Okay, yeah, thanks a lot, thanks for shopping with Amazon," and walks off. But Elon actually gets to the conversation. Sorry, what was that? What do you think about that rocket? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll look into that. Elon. Wow, that's very odd. You're an odd boy. Most people wouldn't give anyone else a time of day. Like if you're Holly and all that, Holly Willoughby. Jumping queues at Glastonbury now. How terrible. Anyway, they just get to a level where they don't want to talk to people. Okay, sorry. My line manager was leaving in work, and she messaged me to remind me to get my hours in for the month because she was leaving early. Last day, etc. I added extra 4 hours to my month's pay claim, about 120 quid, knowing she wouldn't check. Small victories. That's actually not bad, is it?
It's clever, isn't it?
Hustle. Yeah, it's nice. I like that. Good for you.
This one said, this one's a bit mean, but it was, I work for a large consultancy. When we hire new graduates, I have a filter set up to automatically reject anyone who uses could of anywhere in the application. I've rejected hundreds this way, but I guess they're just a bit of a grammar Nazi.
Maybe if I said like, oh, I could have done the marathon. I mean, that's the kind of game that I would play, trying to get my CV to look good.
See, you'd have been rejected, mate.
You know what I mean?
Auto reject.
Yeah, no, they would know my game. They know my game. Yeah, they know my game. But I would have been like, Smile Ryan could have done the marathon. Imran Lasker could have done the marathon. Yeah, Imran Lasker could have done PhD. Done. Anyway,
guys. Well, thank you for who's listening. I don't know, whoever is. Thank you for
I don't know if anyone listens, but if
checking this out again and stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, and I'm going to be putting this on YouTube, so please do subscribe, like. What else do people say on YouTube?
Hit the subscribe button and a like.
Yeah, do that.
And follow our channel or something. Oh, and also, please do check out content our sponsors. Like this. Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
And check out our sponsors. So they put the U in Scrub, so SCRBS. And please feel free to liberally use their 10% off promo code, which is 2medics TWOMEDICS 10 to get 10% off.
Exactly right. These 2 medics are supporting the other 2 medics doing the Scrubs thing. Go for it. Yeah, cool. Anyway, thank you so much for being part of this still. We'll try and make this more regular if we can. Anyway, all right then. Everyone have a great day. Bye.
Cheers, bye.